Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition, another episode, another podcast with the Caregiver's Toolbox. My name is Ryan McAniff. I'm the owner of the Minute Women Home Care. I think I'm the host of this podcast, and I'm here with a great guest, Gary Barg, the editor-in-chief of Caregiver.com. And so what ended up bringing us together is I put up a LinkedIn post of people that I'd love to interview and talk to on this podcast. And Gary was kind enough to reach out and say, hey, listen, send me a link. Let's get together. Let's spend a little time. And I appreciate that. So, Gary, thank you so much for coming on, chatting with us, and giving some exposure to our listeners of a different viewpoint and a different service and resource that's out there for them.
Well, thanks for the invitation. And I was touched when I was on the list of people you wanted to interview, and I listened to the Caregiver's Toolbox. You do a nice job.
Thank you so much.
You have the heart of the caregiver. You come at this the right way, and you can tell. So thank you for having me part of your list of interviewees.
Absolutely. So one thing that I do is that instead of it being at the very end of the episode, how about we talk about quickly, where do people find you? What are your social media? Where are your websites? That way we can do that at the beginning and at the end so people have it twice.
Sure. Okay. Well, we are caregiver.com, no hyphen, just caregiver. We are today's Caregiver magazine. So, Our Twitter is at Today's Caregiver. YouTube, we just like you, we do a lot of taping. I've done many interviews from the celebrities who are the cover of the magazine to the folks who have come and joined us at the almost 300 in-person events that we've done, to the virtual events, and I love to get that information out in front of caregivers, and that's at YouTube at YouTube Fearless Caregiver. I think that's all.
Well,
I'm Gary at caregiver.com.
All right, you're Gary at Caregiver. I mean, there's only so much work one person can do. I know there's a team behind you without a doubt, but for every new social media that comes out, it's like I don't have the energy to do a new one. And most of our adult children are generally on Facebook and YouTube. Those are kind of the two big ones. I don't think caregiving is going to be huge on TikTok anytime soon.
Well, you did remind me of something, because we have a group on Facebook called Fearless Caregiver.
Perfect. So that's a great place for, that's one of the things that I think has so far been keeping Facebook alive and worthwhile, is that it allows people to come together in these groups and be able to have some of the shared experiences and make them feel like they're not the only one out there going through whatever they are. Or if you like hobbies and you like doohickeys, you can find people on Facebook that like that. It's a great thing. So how about, I'm guessing most people at least have somehow, if you're interested in caregiving, they've gone to your website at least. But how would you describe it, and what would you say are the top 2 or 3 things that you are well known for, and what you're providing resources for family caregivers out there?
Well, it's all about the caregiver. Our motto has always been for and about and by caregivers. So a lot of the best articles, information, tips, techniques, support that we get at the in-person events and even the virtual events and on caregiver.com and even in the magazine come from family caregivers. So we love the articles that come over the transom because if you're a caregiver and you're going through something, and you may have learned a technique or learned how to get your loved ones to help. Hopefully, you learned how to get, dad to eat. You want to share that, and we want to be the place where you share that. So we have topic-specific channels at caregiver.com, clinical trial, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. We have 2 weekly newsletters we put out, which are free, and everything. Our in-person event and our virtual events are always free for family caregivers. You don't have to buy any editorial. I mean, we have books and magazines, but the idea is to give the family caregiver a place to realize that they are the CEO of caring for the loved ones, that they are the manager of services, that they are to be respected, and they are to be cared for, and they are to be cherished by the healthcare system, because we are the ones caring for our loved ones 36 hours a day. Your doctor sees them maybe once a week or once a month. And if they're not paying attention to what you have to say, and even paying attention to how your health is, then they're not doing their patient any service. So on our website and our conferences, we always say, I'm a fearless caregiver. Don't mess with me. Because that's what we want to do, is help train, support, motivate the caregivers to realize the important role they play. Caring for themselves is job one, making sure they learn everything they can about their loved ones' illnesses, and never taking no as an answer, or an easy no as an answer from anybody in their loved one's care team, of which I like to say you are the manager of. So it's, our books, the first book was Fearless Caregiver. I think it's in the 4th printing. And then we wrote Caregiving Ties That Bind, which is actually interviews that we've done for the magazine with, I call it caregivers with famous faces. Debbie Reynolds, Della Reese, Clay Walker, Clay Aiken, Robert Urich, Mrs. Carter, Senator Dole. I mean, just everybody dealing with this issue who has a famous face is also a loving daughter, wife, husband, son, family member. So the connectivity is so important. And so that's what that book is. And the most recent book is called You Are Not Alone, which, when we were trying to figure out what to call a book about what we've learned at the conferences over the years, once we had to stop doing in-person events in 2020, we kept thinking, kept saying to each other, what do we call a book that tells them they're not alone? And we went, oh, you are not alone. And that book is filled with actually, I always say it's written by caregivers, because of I think it's 287 events in 25 states and 47 cities around the country. We always learn something. We walk away without at least 3 or 4 new pieces of information, advice, support, techniques that the family caregivers, ostensibly the audience, but they are as important as the professionals who are on the panel interacting with them, that they tell us, that they teach us. And that's what that book is filled with. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine that you could have all the speakers, you want, but, when you have hundreds of people together in a conference, the collective knowledge of the attendees is going to far surpass what one speaker can do, even if they're a great speaker. And that's nothing against the speakers, but you just have, thousands of lived years of doing caregiving services. You can't compete with that. And that makes total sense why you would put that knowledge into a book. And then it's a great idea, because every year or every few years, you can update that with more information that people are finding. Because one of the things I was going to ask you, and it's kind of in my brain, I guess it's a good segue, is that like you were saying that you've been around for a long time, 1996. That's a while ago. That was what a couple of years ago, but. Yeah. Things have changed a lot in your own personal business, where I imagine you were mainly print in the beginning, and then this little weird thing called the internet started popping up, and you said, well, people happen to be on the internet. Maybe we need to do something with this. And certainly the live events and everything, but you have to roll with the punches. And when things change, and as technology is slowly seeping into caregiving, it's not like a tsunami yet, but it will be eventually. Things are changing, and people come in there and say, hey, listen, I found this new doohickey, or there's this new thing that you can use, or I know a big thing is like having a family portal online so that multiple family members across the country can go in and understand exactly what's going on with mom or dad's care and all these different aspects. And it's got to be kind of impressive to see year to year, kind of seeing the almost like the glacier kind of shifting and changing and being different. It's not, a stagnant, static thing. It's something that moves and evolves, just like your business has over the last few decades.
I absolutely agree with you. We're on July 4th, 1995, I was at the printer picking up the first copies of today's Caregiver magazine. And October 16th, I think, 1995, we registered. I went up. I had a phone that plugged into the wall. I think it was push button, not even a dial. And I called Atlanta and I asked if caregiver.com was available. They said yes. So we became caregiver.com. And you're absolutely right. At first, it was just a place for people to maybe get subscriptions to the magazine nationally. And then it became a place for us to interact. And then it became a way, a unique way in its own to support and educate and motivate family caregivers. And now everything's kind of interconnected. We do the virtual events, or when we were doing the in-person events, we do video and we put it on caregiver.com, or we put it in our YouTube channel. And that's the secret sauce, I think, these days, is the interconnectivity of the different media. You hit the nail on the head. At first, the internet was, what is this thing? Who knows? Okay, well, we got it. We're one of the first 100,000 websites registered. And then it took on a life of its own. And what I saw, it's, over the life cycle, at first there was the Help I've Fallen, and then when the technology started coming into its own, I saw, maybe about 15 years ago, it was technology looking for a problem to solve. So everything was a hammer looking for a nail. What I think is exciting about these days is that the technological solutions that are coming out from, many times, experts in their field who are also family caregivers, like us, in my family, who didn't have the support that they could find. I went into these things used to be these things called bookstores. And I went in 94 when I started thinking about the magazine, saying, oh, I'll just go and buy the magazine for caregivers. And it didn't exist. So we said, well, we should do it. And the folks that we do our caregiver thought leader interviews with, the folks who are doing the best work, like yourself, and the folks with the most intuitive and useful technologies are the ones, if you dig deep enough, who came at this from being a family caregiver. So I think, not only is technology caught up to its purposes, and I'm sure 10 years from now we'll go, whoa, why were we doing that 10 years ago? But I also think that there's tremendous heart in a lot of the programs and products that people are putting out. We actually just had our 20th anniversary Caregiver Friendly Award. Media, products, services, organizations that put the caregiver first. And so we always have these nominees, and then they get judged, and have a handful of recipients every year that are caregiver friendly, from their books and media, their products, their services, organizations. And we're really thrilled to have actually been the first place a lot of these ubiquitous services that are out there now reached out to caregivers and said, here we are, how can we help?
Yeah, I totally agree. I've interviewed some guys out in Littleton, Mass, which is 20, 30 minutes away from me. They were a bunch of Dell guys that were helping make Michael Dell lots of money. And they one day found their mom on the ground, and she had died of a heart attack. But they sat there and said, how long was she on the ground for before she died? Was it 1 minute, or was it 1 hour? And so they ended up taking the money that they had made, and they started a company called Well Aware Care, which is a non-wearable, non-interaction alert system. And so I became excited about it because one of the things I'm concerned about is that as the rising costs of private home care continue to go up, there's going to be a gap of people that can't afford those services but need something. And you know that technology is going to get involved in that. And that's why I was like, hey, listen, I got to support you in some way because I think this is a really good idea. But the point of the story is I completely agree that these individuals, and before we were recording, you were saying that these individuals that are getting into these businesses that have personal experiences with them usually succeed more often than somebody that doesn't, because there's a passion behind it, there's an understanding, and there's a lived experience. And until you've gone through, and with my mom, it was only 3 or 4 months. It wasn't a long, arduous process like dementia is, where, I mean, talk about the saints that go through dementia with their parents. But it's still a glimpse into that world and that feeling of completely feeling underwater, not knowing what the hell's going on with my mom's cancer. What is 24-hour home care? What's hospice? What do you mean? Like what? And so you're like I always say, you're drinking from the fire hose. And that's that feeling that whether you've done this for a few months or a few years, you experience that. But there's certainly a lot more involved with those lifelong or decade-long family caregivers that I don't know about. But you know, you meet people, and when you hear their story, you're like, all right, this person seems like they're going to get it. I don't know if their company is going to blow up in a good way and be the next big thing, but they're coming from a place that's good. And I think that you're right. There's a lot of technology out there that's going to be interesting how it's introduced into the caregiving world. And so, like, how are you seeing that? Where are you seeing some of that? Because you have one of the most prominent websites. You're having these, before COVID, in-person events. You're obviously in touch with people that want to be involved with your magazine or on the cover or have an article about them. Where are you seeing things changing in the technology world from your position as the editor-in-chief of Caregiver?
Well, actually, I know the Well Care guys.
Oh, do you?
In our caregiver thought leader interviews. And I think that, like what you're building here, what caregiver needs is a trusted authority, or trusted authorities to go to and say, I'm learning something here because I hear my story in this situation, because I know they're not out there just pitching me something. And because I can pick, we always say with today's Caregiver magazine, or even any article on caregiver.com, is we want a caregiver to walk away with 2 or 3 usable, actionable tools. You know, how to get dad to start eating, how to deal with wandering, issues like that, out of any article, out of any interview. And it's the 92 Olympics was, it's the economy stupid. We always say here, it's the caregiver stupid. Is this for and about and supportive of the caregiver? They don't have time to read, articles that pitching you and your woo and everything you do. They want to know, what can you do for me? I call caregivers the most selfless kind of love, and that's good and bad, because bad is that we caregivers take ourselves out of the circle of care. We make sure our loved ones get all the rest, and we might get 2 hours a night. We make sure our loved ones, go get all their physical therapy, and we never go to the gym. We make sure our loved ones get to their doctor's appointments. And I always say at the events, I won't ask you to raise hands, but I can imagine some of us here have missed doctor's appointments over the years of caregiving, and everybody laughs, And we make sure our loved ones get all the nutrition they need, but we order at night, drive through and order out of a clown's mouth. We got to keep ourselves in the center of care. And the way to do that isn't just say, oh, go on a trip. Oh, don't worry about it. Oh, relax. Oh, get help. Is to give them actionable, manageable tips, and show them other people who are doing things that they can say, hey, I can do that too. I can become a fearless caregiver. I can do what I need to care for myself while caring for my family members, while caring for my loved one. And I know how to get my friends and family members to help. We have a program we call Reverse Gift List on caregiver.com that helps teach caregivers how to ask for how to figure out what these manageable bits of support that they need are, and then who to ask and how to ask. And I found over the years, I've never heard anyone say, if I, ask somebody for something that's appropriate and manageable to do for me, that they said no. And I think a lot of times our friends and family members want to try to help, but we're so involved and we don't want to bother anybody. We're caregivers. We don't want anybody walk in and see what, goes on behind the scenes. But I think it helps the ones that could help and would help. It helps to give them something to do.
Absolutely. And one of the stories that I took away from my mom passing away was she said, listen, I'm going to die. This is terrible. But, we're all going to die. She goes, the cancer is taking away my dignity. And that's what is really the kick to the teeth. And it always stuck with me because we're providing care to people, but we're providing even 1 ounce, 1% more of dignity to somebody. Well, when you're in a position where you're either going to use a bedpan or you can maybe make it to the bathroom with a walker, that's a huge difference in dignity for a lot of people. And so the reason I bring that up is that when you think about that with a caregiver, think about that 1% of relieved pressure that somebody can have, that 2% where, hey, listen, I don't need to worry about my mom for an hour today, and I can go for a walk, or I can just have a coffee and just look at the sunshine, or maybe I can do some of the other chores I need to do, but it takes a little bit of that pressure off. And I think, we're not talking about, it's unlikely somebody's going to get like a 30% reduction in their caregiver duties and the things they need to do. We're talking about incremental changes that help somebody out quite a bit.
It's incremental changes. That's exactly it. And that's what the reverse gift list is. Who can help you with those bite-sized, manageable, easy bits? Maybe your neighbor who says, what can I do? Okay, how about Tuesday night? Come over, cook for us, or maybe when you go to the cleaners or you go to the grocery store, a very small list, I won't abuse you, and some money, you could get me some stuff that I don't have to leave the house and go get. Or, like you said, maybe your cousin who lives, in the same community says, what can I do? Okay, dad knows you. Come in and sit with him for 2 hours while I go get my hair done. This is why we call caregivers being the CEO of Caring for Our Loved Ones, Inc. Because, the CEO of Ford isn't putting the tires on the cars. You need to find out how to get that team, ask for what they want, and get the support you need. Like you say, you're not going to get a 30% reduction, but love to see you get maybe a day's worth of respite a month in these bits and pieces. And it can be done. It's been done many times. And the thing is, it helps everybody when you ask for the support you need as a family caregiver. It helps you, helps your loved ones, and it helps the person you're asking.
Yeah, absolutely. And that little bit, the next door neighbor or the family member that lives close by that can just take the trash out once a week, or, those little things. One area that we're finding in home care, and it would be interesting to get into a perspective of what you're seeing, is that we have a caregiver crisis going on for home care. Obviously, home care, assisted living, and nursing homes. If for those that don't know, we're all pulling from the same pool of caregivers to employ. And before COVID, there wasn't enough caregivers, and now during COVID, there's just everybody is struggling right now. And so we'll get calls from people that are like, I just want 3 hours a day or 4 hours a day. And that sounds like a lot, but unfortunately it just isn't. Your community must be experiencing this as well. And how are they coping with those shorter hours, and how are they finding a way around that when paid services aren't able to help? Like, for example, even if you hire hospice right now and they say that they're going to be out 7 days a week, I'd be willing to bet they're not going to be out 7 days a week. They're probably going to be out 4 or 5, even though because they just don't have the caregivers to do it anymore, which puts more pressure back on those family caregivers that don't need a monumental amount of care that I know I can staff. Are you hearing anything about that? And then how are people in your community talking about that with that challenge?
I'm hearing a lot about that. I'm hearing about that in the long-term care environment as well, about not being able to find help. And I know people in home care around the country who are having this. And not only are you all pulling from the same pool, but all the home care companies in the community are pulling from the same pool. And when that pool is diminished, everybody suffers. I have a loved one in a long-term care facility, which is a lovely place and well respected, but they can't find help in the dining room. So when dining comes around, the executive director, the valet for the cars out front, the marketing director, the activities director, they're all cleaning plates and serving their residents. It's you got to do what you got to do. And I think that I didn't know I talked this much about the reverse gift list, but I think that's a great tool as well, because if you're a manager of this organization, the most important organization you'll ever lead, called Caring for My Loved One Inc., then you look at with the things you need, the services available, and who can plug in when the services fall through, because they will, and they do. How much do you actually need? What agency can you work with? I mean, I'm sure you guys have your finger on the pulse in your community, absolutely, of what caregivers are saying and what the aides are saying, and it's always been a challenge, but it's more of a challenge now than ever. And I think a lot of this has to do with how you can pull from different pools of support to get the support you need as a caregiver, rather than sit back and say nothing can be done.
And so what was that called? The reverse, I missed this.
It's on caregiver.com. It's called the reverse gift list. How do I get you to give me a gift?
All right, gotcha. That's so the reverse gift list is that's finding people to not finding people, but it's letting people know how that they can help and how that they can support.
The way we look at it is to say, come up with 10 bite-sized, easy, manageable tasks. I got to get dad to the dentist. I've got to do this. I got to do that. There's just some 10 things that could help if someone did that for you. No one's asking, for you to give up caregiving. You don't want, you're not going to do that. You're going to, here are the keys, be back in a month, or give away the checkbook and say, write the checks. But what can you do to take the minutia away from me so I can focus on the important stuff? And find the 10 bite-sized, easy, manageable tasks, and find 10 people that you can ask of. And when we, at the in-person events, we always ask this question. And you know what the most popular response is? It blew me away, but time after time after time. Maybe I can get my sister, who lives near me, to come and help me do laundry so we could sit and talk. Over and over and over again. There maybe my cousin's son is good with cars and he can come and take care of the car so I don't have to go do it, or can mow the lawn. These things are their weight in gold but you have to know what those tasks are, and you have to know and be comfortable who to ask, and realize you're not asking anybody for something that they wouldn't want to do anyway.
Absolutely. And in my experience with working with lots of families over the decade I've been in this industry, is that usually, no matter how big the family is, there's always one person that's taking the brunt of the caregiving, family care, right? So, I mean, that as well as anybody else, but you're absolutely right. If you can delegate even a little bit of tasks, then that can be a really helpful in terms of just, many hands make light work. Now, it's never going to be super light, but it's going to be manageable, far more manageable than when you feel like you're completely alone. And I would imagine that, I would say maybe like 90% of the reason why that woman wants her sister over there to help with laundry isn't that because she can't do the laundry on her own. She wants to have some companionship, to feel like she's not alone in this whole thing, and come on over and we can still stay connected and catch up and chat, because I don't have the time to go out to coffee with you anymore. So how can we make this work on a different level, and it keeps my spirits up too?
Yeah, and actually, it doesn't even have to be anything physical. I'm not being Pollyanna. We all have family members. We can all list them who won't do a thing, never understand, won't understand what your caregiving is, looks at you and wonders what's wrong with you. But you can ask them to pay for something. Look, the brother who lives 4 states away and he's busy with his own family, and mom can't go stay with you because you're always going out to, some ski vacation or whatever. All I want you to do is go to one of these amazing online, product companies and pay just automatic. You don't have to touch it, just an automatic payment every month to get mom's undergarments sent to the house. That's fabulous. The insure, the whatever it is. It doesn't have to be anything they actually have to do or think about other than that they've done a good thing. I have to say I'm blessed. I have a tremendous brother and sister, and we all jumped in when mom took ill, and did everything we could. But we found, interestingly enough, that we segmented ourselves into different parts of this organization. Like, I'm the one who always takes mom to the doctor, and she calls first. My sister's the one who deals with the products and the food that come in the house. And my brother's got his own. For some reason, mom thinks my brother's the manager of mail. Doesn't make any sense. So we gather mail that comes into actually my sister's house and gives it to my brother so he can give it to my mom. So interestingly enough, we all segmented out different aspects of care, but we all love mom and we're all on the phone with her all the time. We take her to lunch, and she sees the great grandkids. But even this, we've kind of self-selected what roles we play.
Absolutely. One of the things I do find that's unfair, and I see it time and time again, and it kind of bucks what we're talking about now sometimes, is that usually the adult child who's a female, the daughter takes the caregiving role, and then there's some like distant brother that does the financial management. And I've always sat there like, I send you out a bill, I automatically charge the credit card, and then I send you a receipt. So I'm not even sending you a bill. I'm charging the credit card, sending out the bill. Now, I know I'm not the only vendor, but I'm probably one of the most expensive vendors. Like, what's there to, how much managing of money does it take to write out a check to a vendor? Yeah, absolutely. But, all that joking aside, and that certainly happens. And listen, when I decided to move out to Colorado, that's what happened to me. I'm an only child, so the example isn't perfect. But if I did have a sibling that happened to be around where my parents ended up in Florida, at no point in time when I moved to Colorado, when I was 22 after college, did I say, well, I would want to get as far away as my parents, because when they finally age and decline, I don't want to be the one that has to take care of them. I don't think that's on most people's minds when they move. But then fast forward 10 or 15 years, and one family member lives 10 miles away and another family member lives 110 miles away. There's obviously going to be an unfair distribution of work that needs to be done. And that's where I think what a lot of the things you do are so important, because, having those 10 family friends helping out is huge, but at the end of the day, it's going to fall on somebody to be at the very least the care manager, if not the caregiver themselves. And when that happens, it can be a very lonely world that they live in, because people leave their jobs, or they reduce their hours, or, their whole life becomes focused around providing care to somebody, because, imagine it being your child, like, right? Your whole life was around making sure that child, nothing bad happened to it. And it's the same thing. And so I have to imagine that your live seminars and conferences that you do that are online now have to be super important to people, that they're able to still connect with people. Your Facebook group is still being able to connect and share those stories, even if it can't be in person. And there might be even some, and you're probably going to have this issue on a bit larger of a scale that I have it in my networking meetings and things, that there are a lot more people joining online than were coming to my networking meetings in person. So that geographical barrier is gone with Zoom, but you still want the personal interaction at some point in time. You must have a lot of people that are taking advantage of the online, being able to connect via video conferencing. Especially, there must be a large portion that were like, listen, I'm a family caregiver. There's no way I'm going to be able to get down to this conference because I don't have the time to do it. It must have opened it up to a lot more people.
Well, we always think it's funny when someone tries to do a national event for caregivers, because they end up doing a local event, because the caregivers who come are from their community, because a caregiver in, Seattle isn't going to come across to Sheboygan. I'm just trying to find cities that are funny together. To go to an event for 3 days. So we go to the caregivers. I always think all caregiving is national in implication. You need to know what's going on in DC. You need to know what's going on in your state capital. You need to know Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, VA. Incredible. If you are a veteran, your loved one's a veteran, your loved one's spouse is a veteran or was a veteran, you have to go to the VA caregiver site. I'm not going to pretend I know what it is, but they're caregiver coordinators that cover most every community, and they're associated with the veteran hospital. And we've always had them at our events. And it's amazing, because they always say, if you thought you knew what was going on with VA support 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 2 years ago, you don't know nothing. So there's aid and attendance, there's support, there's all sorts of stuff that the VA can do for you if you had a veteran in your family or you're a veteran. So I want to make sure that that's definitely a point to be made. But also, I think that all caregiving is local in application. Like you have a great home care company. I think it's fantastic. But you're no help to my mom in Aventura, Florida. So, I need to know who you are there, or what elder care attorney is in, some other city where my loved one's living. So we've gone on the planes, we got in the cars, and we go to the cities and have the caregivers, come to us. In Broward County, Florida, where I'm sitting in Fort Lauderdale, I said we're doing in-person events, and we'll do them again. We do a West Broward County and East Broward County event. In Palm Beach Treasure Coast, we do 5 events. We do 7 or 8 in Florida, but we've done California, Alaska, Michigan, and South Florida, and all points in between, because that's where caregiving lives. It lives in your local community. The support and the advice and the wisdom that we can give you on caregiver.com through the magazine and the books is endemic to any caregiver anywhere. But the individual support that you need, who is the VA caregiver coordinator in my community? What home care company do I want to work with, and who are those people? Who are the care managers of my community? So we have to go to them. And now we're doing that virtually. We just did our Orlando event, and we've done one for Fort Worth, sitting here in Fort Lauderdale. Did one for New Haven, did a few other Florida events, and hopefully I'm actually was thinking about doing a Colorado event because we were going to, right before everything closed down, we were just about to do actually a Denver Fearless Caregiver Conference. So, we'll see what happens there. I mean, I don't know how soon everybody's comfortable about being in the room together, or it's a hybrid situation, but isolation is a killer. That's the killer. That a caregiver or your care recipient or your loved one is sitting there, and frankly, many places around the country, they have to right now, but being isolated. So what is the website? What is the Zoom meeting? What is the is there LinkedIn? Is it Facebook? If it's Facebook groups, is it chats? Face chats, is it telehealth? How do we help our loved ones not isolate? Because that is the killer for family caregivers.
Absolutely. And senior care is very hyper local. I mean, with my podcast that you're on now, people have been like, oh, are you going to do you do a podcast because you want to get like business? And I'm like, no, like, I am this small little 15 circular mile of service area that I can help out of the whole United States. There's no way I'm going to get any business from this. But it's about helping people. But you're absolutely right. It's very local, and it's hyper local, in my opinion, for a lot of the services that are provided. So yeah, it's a great thing that you're able to, obviously before COVID, I assume you were traveling a bit more, but now you have to take the show on the interwebs, and that allows people to stay connected. And you're absolutely right. Those shocking photos that came out of seniors who were isolated in their assisted living apartments, the before and after of just 6 months or 8 months of isolation it looked like they had a terminal disease of some kind, and that was with people that were in the same apartment with sometimes their own spouse. And it still caused that because it is just not being able to be social. And those industries are going to have a tough time bouncing back from kind of that difficult scenario. They were between a rock and a hard place of what do we do? But still, it's going to be tough for a lot of assisted livings to bounce back from, hey, I don't know what happens if I place my mom and then there's another lockdown and you're going to be in her room again. But that's the tough decisions that families are finding themselves in. And it can't be a good place to be, but it's where we're at. And like you said, who knows what's going to happen with this Delta variant? Who knows what's going to happen in the future? But as of right now, we just got to do the best that you can with the information that you have. And sometimes you got to roll the dice a little bit and hope that there's a little bit of luck on your side as well. But, I would imagine that people are clamoring to get back together. It's just a matter of if they're willing to and if they feel it's safe enough. And did you find that it was happening at all over the summer, or people were, amped up come April and May when the vaccines were kind of readily available? Hey, June, July, August, let's do something. But that seems to be kind of not looking good right now.
Well, yeah, we had to look too, because we had again 287. We did 2 in February of 2020, and then obviously everything shut down. So we have 16 on abeyance, and we've done 7 or 8 of them virtually. And absolutely over the last few months, we're like, okay, I don't want to jump the gun. I don't want to say, oh, we're coming to Toledo again, and then have this 4th wave hit us, which heaven help us, I think is hitting us now, and disappoint everybody. So it's a balancing act of how far ahead of it you can get, because who knows what the next thing's going to be. If we were talking in April, yeah, sure, here it goes. Fall, no problem. And now, I know we will be doing a New Haven event in person in November. And we'll be doing a hybrid event in Palm Bay, Florida. And so you have to test, it's all about the safety and security as well. You mentioned about people being interested in, the first thing people say is, when are we getting back together? No matter what community it is. And then oh, good, I can do this virtually. And we found that the virtual events, I was a little worried at first, it's going to be just people sitting in their computer screen. But boy, they're as interactive. People are always, raising their hands and putting questions in the chats, and I'm moderating, and and I'm thrilled. The intensity, it's different. You're not in the same room, and virtual hugs are not as good as real hugs. But we found that interest in asking questions and interacting with the professionals on the panel is pretty much the same. And the other thing is, we'll find people saying after the virtual events, oh, when are you doing the video? Because we do a video, and we do a video recap and send it out to everybody in the community if they could come or not come. So first, when are we getting back together? Then, oh my gosh, how do I get on this virtual event? And then, when are you sending out the video? So whatever it takes to help caregivers not isolate and be together and learn from each other. The subset of our conference is called the Day of Sharing Wisdom, because it's what it's about. We don't do breakouts. We call it the no PowerPoint, no pontificating, no speechifying zone. Basically, the panel of experts, the caregivers in the room, we might have 30 or 40 tables around them, and everybody's an expert. There are always moments that, again, in the in-person events where we call stump the panel. Doctors, lawyers, executives, no matter who it is, there's a question that comes up from the audience. I run over with the mic, and there's this long pause. 5 caregivers raise their hand. The panelists are going, the 5 caregivers raise their hand. At one time at every event this happens. And they're brilliant solutions they came up with, whatever the challenge was. And the panelists, the experts, are going, oh, that's great. So it's
everybody can be a teacher, and everybody can be a learner. It's the student and the teacher. One of the things I jokingly say to people is that sometimes I'm the CEO and sometimes I'm the chief envelope licker. Like you could be the editor in chief, and some days you're the editor in sweep, just sweep up after everything. So everybody can learn something, and that's great that happened. Now, you looking at your website, you just had a virtual conference for the Orange County, Florida area, and you have one coming up in Hillsborough County. So right. I think we should give some props to that and let people know about that. I imagine that's Florida still. I don't know all the counties, but I'm thinking, you said New Haven. I'm like, well, that's New Haven, Connecticut, right?
Yeah.
But there's all right. So we were on the same.
We're in Florida. Florida is the crucible of caregiving, but again, we've done events all over the country, and we're looking to replicate our schedule around the nation. It just happens we have, I like to, stay south in the winter and stay away from hurricane season. So
that makes sense.
We're trying to replicate our in-person event. So we've been to Atlanta, we've been to Kodiak, Alaska, we've been to Summit, New Jersey, we've been to LA. So sometimes people say, oh, you just do Florida. No, look a little deeper, because there might be a set of Florida events in a row, but then you'll find, like you say, New Haven, Connecticut, and Fort Worth, Texas, and Dallas, and because wherever the caregivers are, that's where we want to be.
Yeah, and listen, doing in-person events is a lot of tough work. I mean, it's a lot of work putting those events together, and your job is not only putting it together, but getting people to come and having experts involved, and then all the other different aspects of that. That's a lot of work to do. So it's not like you can just, it's not a traveling road show, right? It's got time and preparation, and you've got to, make it work. And there are probably a lot of different places that almost like a touring band, there's probably always one city that's like, hey, listen, you haven't come back here in a X amount of time. When are you coming back? And it's like, well, there's a lot of places to go, and there's a lot of people to see. Well,
what's funny, Ryan? We always say that when a community locks in, generally they lock in. New Haven is 15 years. We did Nashville for 10 years, and we're gonna go back. we do our first event, obviously here in Fort Lauderdale, is 23 years. So we're very excited when we go someplace. They say, okay, next year, and that does reduce the time a little about getting 100 other cities, but it's exciting. You're like growing with this family of caregivers, who are then bringing 3 other caregivers every year. So it, and also that feels good that they want us to come back rather than write us out on a reel.
They don't have pitchforks and torches taking you out of town or anything like that.
Not everywhere.
Not everywhere. I mean, we won't talk about the places that did anyways, right? Those didn't happen. No, hey, Gary, thank you so much. We're up against the 60-minute mark. I'd love to have you. Love to have you on. I plan on actually reading the You Are Not Alone book, and maybe we can talk about that another time. But just one more time, where can people find you? How can people reach you, and take it from there?
Caregiver.com, 800-829-2734. We're at, we have a linked, we have a Facebook group, Fearless Caregiver. We're at Today's Caregiver on Twitter, and then a bunch of others. Just call us.
Yeah.
And Gary at caregiver.com.
Perfect. And so for people that maybe are driving that can't remember all of that, if you go to caregiver.com, in the top left-hand corner is all the social media, the Facebook group, Twitter, YouTube. It looks like Pinterest as well. But I think that's great. I think it's awesome that we were able to get connected through LinkedIn. I think one of the things that blows my mind with LinkedIn is people connect with one another and then they never talk. They just somehow become connected. So I thought it was great that LinkedIn brought us together, because I always kind of under my breath say we're all LinkedIn, but nobody actually talks to one another. So we proved the algorithm wrong. And I appreciate you coming on the show. And it's great to be able to get your input for all the listeners and people that are, in exactly the position that we found ourselves in life, of being the family caregiver and looking for resources and information about that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for all you do. And I look forward to seeing the rest of your interviews over the years.
All right. Well, thanks, Gary. And thank you all for listening to the Caregiver's Toolbox. Check out caregiver.com. Check out Gary. It's a website that if you don't know about it, I'm surprised, but you're going to find a lot of resources on there. And we will catch you on the next one.